Alright, so I'm watching this Aaron Ra Pistis video, and then I watch a little bit of a Sentinel Apologetics on the same subject, analyzing Aaron Ra. And honestly, I really want to do a full accounting of both. I want to watch both of these videos, about 2 hours, 2.5 hours combined. I don't know if I'll be able to get to it all this week because, I got a lot of stuff coming up. So I just wanted to say a couple words on the dirty word faith. Ew, faith, I can't believe it. Because Aaron Ra does a real mental jujitsu on the word of faith, as do all atheists. Now, he insists up and down that it means evidence without belief. Again, I'll do a full accounting once I've watched his whole video and Sentinel Apologetics. I'll do a long thing on it. But right now, I just want to address this one thing. So he insists up and down that faith only means evidence without belief. That's it. That's the only way. That's what it means. Now, here's the thing that really started to bother me when I'm watching this. How did faith become such a dirty word? Faith is believing without evidence. That was said by Richard Dawkins, okay? Richard Dawkins wrote a book. Huh? Yeah, Richard Dawkins wrote a book. So, who on earth writes a book with evidence that people are going to read it? Nobody. Why? Book doesn't exist. Nobody has evidence that somebody's going to read your book before it's written. Why? Because it doesn't exist yet. So what do? You take a leap of faith. Ew, faith is believing without evidence. How did faith become a dirty word to these people? How are they doing such a thoroughgoing mental jujitsu that, let me school you all right here, right now. Everybody uses faith to wake up in the morning and face your tomorrow. Why? Because the day doesn't exist yet. There is no evidence that things are going to work out for you at all. Ever. Why? Because the day isn't here. So all of us have faith to one degree or another. And we are all, to one degree or another, using evidence of things not seen. We are trusting in the benevolence and the goodness of life itself to one degree or another. Else you're going to sleep, or else why wake up in the morning? Kill yourself tonight. Honestly, every single one of us. The Bible even says that. To each man is giving a measure of faith. Every single one of us has some degree of trust or confidence in the benevolence or goodness of life itself, or we wouldn't be moving forward in the morning. And no, we don't always have sufficient evidence for this confidence. And what the Bible is actually saying is sometimes, not only is that the right thing to do, sometimes that's noble and good. Let me give you a real world example. So we stop playing their game. Their game is obfuscate reality, do a mental jujitsu on concepts in the Bible and pretend they're bad. Faith is something that I used before I became a Christian. I moved out to California and make a new life for myself. Why? I had faith that things were going to work out for me and get better. Else why go? Did I have any evidence that they would? No, not really. I had inferences I made. Same idea. Now, let's take faith the way Aaron Ra means it. Let's make it even worse. He's always saying faith is belief without evidence. Faith is belief without evidence. Faith is belief without evidence. So is sometimes life itself. And let's go one deeper. And I'll show you how noble it actually is from the real world. And let's go one deeper. Sometimes faith is belief in the goodness of life itself, the ultimate triumph of justice, and the benevolence of the universe, despite evidence to the contrary. Yeah, even worse than insufficient evidence. I'll give you an example from the real world. Social history of the United States. There was a thing called the Civil Rights Movement. You've all heard of it, correct? That took place right here in these very United States. A key leader in the Civil Rights Movement, coincidence of coincidences, was a deeply religious man. Gee, what an interesting coincidence. And he had to move forward and acquire justice for an oppressed group of people, not based on insufficient evidence, that'd be bad enough. Despite tons of evidence to the contrary. And he said, quote, "The sword of justice is long and it bends to the right." What does that actually mean in real world terms? It means it may look bad now. It may look bad now. Weeping may endure for the night, but joy cometh in the morning. Justice will be served. How do you know this, Martin Luther King Jr.? Because I have faith. I have faith in the goodness and the benevolence and the justness of God himself. Faithful is he that has called me. That was his actual answer. How do I know that? Because in the real world terms, there was tons of evidence to the contrary that justice was actually going to be found. The surreal social history of the United States, the civil rights movement was about 20 years long when he came around. Mid-60s, started roughly in the 50s. Do you know how long black African Americans were enslaved? 400 years. It's a lot longer than 20, is it not? 400 years they were enslaved. That's a long history of oppression and injustice. And then slavery ended in 1865. Then you have 100 years of things like the Jim Crow laws. So all of the evidence suggested that we were a hopelessly corrupt and racist nation, and there is no way that these people were going to find justice. That's what the evidence actually clearly suggested. That's what it clearly suggested. Martin Luther King Jr. made a different moral calculation. Why? Based on faith. Based on the substance of things hoped for and the evidence of things not seen. The evidence of things not seen. That the sword of justice is long and it bends to the right. That life is good. That goodness will ultimately triumph in the end because God is good and God is sovereign and justice will be served. There was no evidence to support this conclusion. None. No evidence to support this conclusion. None. As a matter of fact, there was ample evidence to the contrary. Sometimes in life, you move forward based on insufficient evidence. It's called, actually, life. Always. We move forward in life without knowing what tomorrow brings. Why? There is no evidence for tomorrow. It does not exist yet. So we cannot examine the evidence about tomorrow. We move forward based on what? Faith. Trust. Trust in the ultimate benevolence, the benevolence and the goodness of life itself, and by extension, God himself. It's not a dirty word. It's not. It's really not. No, Richard Dawkins himself. Faith is believing without evidence. Okay, Richard Dawkins wrote a book. He wrote a book. There is never any evidence that anybody's going to read your book. Why? It has not been written yet. Writing a book is by definition a leap of faith. It's by definition a leap of faith. So let's stop the jujitsu. Faith isn't a dirty word. And if you're a Christian, let's stop pretending like it is a dirty word. The only mistake Michael Jones made was to, play your game along with you. Play your game along with you. Now, I'll go into the definitions of trust versus faith, pistis, and things like that when I listen to the full video. It should be interesting. Honestly, it should be really interesting. Looking forward to it. So I just needed to get that out there. It's this whole concept. This whole concept is jujitsu. The whole framing device that faith is something we have to constantly apologize for, when most people throughout history have understood clearly that is something that is good. It's life-affirming, it's positive, it's what enables you to move forward in the morning, and every single atheist I know under the sun uses faith to one degree or another. Because none of us know what tomorrow is going to bring. We are basing our calculus on faith alone. Usually, why? Because we have no evidence of tomorrow. It's what life usually is. And sometimes life, as I pointed out in the civil rights movement, sometimes life itself requires that you move forward based on insufficient evidence. And even worse, despite evidence to the contrary. This isn't the first time I'm going to talk about this. It's honestly not. It's really not the first time I'm going to talk about this. That's not the only example in the real world where somebody was called upon to have faith. To have faith in a difficult circumstances where all of the evidence was to the contrary. The evidence suggested, give up, quit, throw in the towel, we're done. That's what the evidence would suggest. It's not the only example I'm going to bring up. It's not a dirty word. It's really not. Faith. It's really not a dirty word. All right. That is all for now. Mass is ended. Go in peace. Amen.